discussing veterans funding issues. In September, Congress approved billions of dollars to the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs for the rest of the year. But conversations about additional funding needed in 2025 are likely to continue. Joining us now for more is the Republican North Carolina Senator, Ted Budd. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be with you, Loretta.
Listen, let's just start with this because we are honoring Veterans Day right now. For you, what's so important about having a day like this set aside to honor all of our veterans?
A lot of veterans throughout generations in my family. There's over 600,000 here in North Carolina. I think this is the most military-friendly state, as many of our signs say on our interstates and highways. And we want to be friendly from every angle, including as representatives for the state, me in the U.S. Senate now, making sure that they get what they've earned, what we've promised to them as a nation. And there's been a lot of challenges through the VA, some which were fixed under Trump's first administration, which tended to erode during the Biden administration. Now we've got to get them back on track. But we owe them our freedoms, and we're grateful for them. And we got to demonstrate it for how the VA handles their cases and claims. It's what all representatives' office focus. One of their main focus is making sure that the veterans get the service and what we've set aside for them for their service to our country. What we saw last September, and you mentioned in your opening comments that an additional $3 billion was set aside for them. And of course, we want to jump on those opportunities when we realize that there's a shortfall. The problem is that they've indicated in a recent memo that there never was a shortfall. The current VA under the Biden administration has indicated that they didn't have enough money. And now they say they had enough money. We're just seeing real incompetence from that administration in the VA, and our veterans deserve a lot more than that.
There have been over a million claims made into the PAC Act. This did expand services for veterans. It also has been costly, that expansion of services.
Well, it has been, but for us here in North Carolina, our focus inside of the PAC Act was the Camp Lejeune-related bill, and that is for those 50s, 60s, 70s, perhaps early 1980s, were exposed to water problems, which led to later problems in life. And so we want to be very supportive of that. There were calculations that increased the funding for the VA to compensate for that. However, they said there was another shortfall. And now they're saying, oh, they had the money. We're just asking for competence and clarity is all we're asking for. Senator Dan Sullivan from Alaska, he just retired as a Marine himself. So he did double duty as a Marine reservist and a U.S. Senator. And he has really highlighted this through one of his pieces of legislation, which says, if you're not going to be clear or competent, then report to us in person every single quarter to tell us where you are fiscally. And I think our taxpayers deserve that, and certainly our veterans deserve that.
So let's talk about what needs to get done when Congress comes back into session this year, which is fairly soon. The funding bill will run out before the end of the year. When we talk about veterans issues, obviously there's a funding element to that has to go into anything for any continuing. Funding bills have traditionally been a pretty big hurdle to get passed in Congress. So how confident are you of getting this done?
Well, again, we'll have several weeks. We got all the way through the end of the year. We're in the new fiscal period. Remember, we're in fiscal year 2025 when it comes to the federal government. This is going to take the House and the Senate. I think those are things we can work across the aisle easily on. I wouldn't say easily, but definitely on when it comes to funding for our veterans or when it comes to our elderly and those on Social Security. We're fulfilling promises that we've made to people, and we've got to do that. We've got to make sure it's fiscally sound. And so I think in this case, we need the VA administration to come to us every quarter, which is why I've supported Dan Sullivan's legislation on this. But until that passes, it's a good idea for them to come before us. Where are they? Prove it. Show us the receipts, if you will, and let us know what you need to provide for our veterans and for those who've served our country. And I think we can do a lot of that in the VA committees in the House and the Senate to make sure that happens before the year's over.
We talk about VA hospitals and the accessibility for our veterans to get to actually get this health care that they need. How do you feel like the veterans here in North Carolina are doing with that accessibility?
It's going to depend on where they live in the state, what their particular needs are, because you're going to have a bit of a mixed bag. Some VA hospitals perform a little better than others, but we want them all to be way above average, especially here in North Carolina, where there's so many military bases. Even folks that didn't serve or pass through North Carolina in their service are ending up here in North Carolina. So we want them to have great service through one of the 14 congressional offices, or my office, or Senator Tillis's office. I'm on Senator Tillis is on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I'm on the Senate Armed Services Committee. So between the two of us, we cover a great footprint for North Carolina, being able to serve either those who are on active duty service or those who are veterans. And again, we just have to make sure that an administration which could easily drift is accountable. And that's one of the things passed under the Trump administration, which we need to revitalize, and that is the VA Accountability Act, making sure veterans get what they have served us for and what they put into the system for.
As always, Senator Budd, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Loretta.
And Federal Veterans Affairs say more funding is needed for their department due to what they call the largest expansion of the VA health care and benefits in generations. A veteran weighs in on his thoughts